Introducing YouTube memberships, a fun way to support the channel while getting some exclusive perks. Click the join button to become a member now and get benefits like badges next to your name on videos, behind-the-scenes photos, advantages during the live trivia game, discounts on merchandise, private one-on-one video chats, the ability to request future video topics, and exclusive 8 to 10 minute videos on the history of the NFL. And now, on with our feature presentation. September 14th, 2023. It's week 2 of the NFL season, and we've got a big NFC battle on our hands over at Lincoln Financial Field on Thursday Night Football between the Minnesota Vikings and the Philadelphia Eagles. For the Eagles, the good news for them is that this is a primetime game in front of a national television audience and in front of their home fans. So this is their home opener and their first game back in Philly after last year's appearance in the Super Bowl. And the good news for them is that not only do they have momentum themselves, having come off of a Week 1 victory against the New England Patriots, but they're going up against a Vikings team that has been notoriously bad in Philadelphia, having lost 9 of their last 11 in the city of brotherly love. And they're going up against a Vikings team that is reeling after a sloppy and somewhat unexpected loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Win this game and improve to 2-0, and not only are you off to a perfect start to the season, but you get a critical win in what could be an ultra-competitive battle in the NFC East. As for how this game was going for the Eagles, when it came to their running game, it was, in a word, dominant. There's a reason why the Eagles were leading this contest, as thanks to a ground game that picked up a whopping 259 yards on the day on 5.4 yards per carry, the Eagles felt like they were in control of this one for much of the second half, especially after jumping out to a 27-7 lead, not even 4 minutes into the third quarter. However, even though the Eagles never really felt like they were in any danger because of how good their ground game was, the Vikings, to their credit, were not going away quietly into the night, as after 2 touchdowns by the Vikings, it was now a 27-21 ball game. For the Eagles, a score here is critical. Get any sort of points, whether it's a field goal or a touchdown, and you make it a 2-possession contest. And sure enough, the Eagles do just that, as after starting the drive at their own 25-yard line following a touchback, they marched down the field thanks to their dominant rushing attack. DeAndre Swift gets 7 carries on the drive and picks up 63 yards on them, including a huge 43-yard play near midfield with about 4.5 minutes left to break Minnesota's backs. Then, when Swift punched it in from 2 yards out to give the Eagles a 33-21 lead, it felt as though this game was truly over. A valiant effort by the Vikings, especially considering how catastrophic the game looked at times, but it was close but no cigar. Now, with the Eagles up by 12, it's very clear what the Eagles have to do here. You've got to go for 2. Make this a 14-point game. If you can get the 2, then 2 touchdowns with the extra point only force a tie. Every team in football goes for 2 in this situation, because it's the obvious thing to do, since the difference between a 12 and a 13-point game is ridiculously minuscule at this stage with this little time left, while the difference between a 12-point game and a 14-point game is monumental. And I'm sure that head coach Nick Sirianni and offensive coordinator Brian Johnson have something good drawn up for this all-important situation. So come on, Eagles. Let's see what you got. You're kicking the extra point? But I don't understand. It's a 12-point game. Making it a 13-point game does nothing. It literally does nothing. Why are you kicking the extra point? Why are you kicking the extra point?
Got him in your fantasy league. You're thrilled, Elliott, for the point after.
Welcome to Dumb Decisions. Before I break down what happened here, this whole series is about taking an in-depth look at decisions made during games that were clearly awful from the start. This isn't something to look bad in hindsight. Rather, this is something to look awful almost immediately. These are moves where your gut instinct tells you right away that there is no way this can possibly work. And sure enough, Your gut instinct was smarter than that of an NFL head coach. And for this one, we're taking a look at the mind of Philadelphia Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni. Sirianni has done amazing things for the Eagles. He's led them to the playoffs in back-to-back seasons and guided them to an appearance at Super Bowl 57 last season. He's one of the bright young minds in this game, and in all likelihood, he's going to be Philly's coach for an awfully long time. But this was not one of his finest moments whatsoever. Not by a long shot. This was a massive brain fart on his end that was blatantly obvious that he's very fortunate did not have massive implications for his team as the game went on. So with that being said, let's take a look at why kicking the extra point up by 12 with 4 minutes left is a bad idea. There are two things that you can do in this situation. Option 1 is to kick the extra point and try to make it a 13-point game, which is what Sirianni tried to do here. The worst case scenario is that the kick gets blocked and returned for 2 points the other way, making it a 10-point game. However, if we assume that this is the true doomsday scenario, the worst case scenario in all likelihood is that Jake Elliott misses the extra point, either because he pushes it like he pushed a field goal earlier in the game, or because the protection on the line doesn't hold up. The best case scenario is that you get the extra point and increase the score to 34-21. In the worst case scenario where you don't get it, and it remains 33-21, guess what? The Vikings need to score 2 touchdowns with the extra point to take the lead. In the best case scenario where you do get it, and make it 34-21, guess what? The Vikings need to score 2 touchdowns with the extra point to take the lead. At this stage in the contest, there is, quite literally, no difference between a 12-point game and a 13-point game. It's not as though the Vikings possibly have enough time to get 3 possessions, where the possibility of a touchdown with the extra point for 7, a field goal for 3, and then another field goal for 3 is doable. With 4 minutes left, the Vikings have time for 2 possessions max. They need to score a touchdown on both of them. No questions asked. And if they hit the extra point, which is a pretty safe bet, then the Vikings have 35 points and have the lead. Meanwhile, let's look at what just about everyone with the brain would have done in this situation. And that is go for 2, especially since you were moving the ball at will and were running it with ease. If you don't get it, then much like the missed extra point, it remains a 33-21 ball game. So the worst case scenario is exactly the same. However, if you do get it, you take a 35-21 lead, and you lead by 14 points. Now guess what? The Vikings need to score 2 touchdowns and 2 extra points. And if they do that, the game is only tied. The Vikings don't automatically win just by finding the end zone twice and kicking it through the uprights on a chip shot twice. The only way they win in regulation is by scoring 15 or more, so they get a 2-point conversion somewhere. If you go for 1, the Vikings win the game with 2 touchdowns and 2 extra points. If you go for 2, the Vikings only tie the game with 2 touchdowns and 2 extra points. See the difference? Considering what it does to the score, considering how much time is left, and considering the fact that the worst case scenarios in both options are identical, but the best case scenario in one is significantly better than the best case scenario in the other, there is quite possibly no good reason here to kick the extra point. None whatsoever. And just to prove how stupid this play was, it was so stupid that I had to do some digging. It was almost unprecedented. Pro Football Reference is a play finder that lets you go back and look at individual plays all the way up until 1994. I looked at every single situation that was identical to this one, as in 5 minutes or less left in the contest, and you just took a 12-point lead. Simply put, how many times has a team actually kicked the extra point in that situation and had the brain fart that Sirianni did? And a play like this is so brain dead that it has not been tried in 7 years. Seriously. The last time something like this happened, you've got to go back, oddly enough, to Week 2 of the 2016 season on Thursday Night Football, when the New York Jets played the Buffalo Bills. After Matt Forte scored a touchdown from 12 yards out to give the Jets a 36-24 lead, for some reason, head coach Todd Bowles sends Nick Folk on to try the extra point and give the Jets a 37-24 lead, even though doing so makes no sense. It's a baffling decision that almost cost the Jets as they won 37-31. But that's how stupid Sirianni's decision was. The math made so little sense that no team has tried it in 7 years. And that is literally the only time in the last decade, besides whatever we saw on Thursday night, that a team has done this. In every other instance, in the countless of other moments where a team led by 12 late after scoring a touchdown, they went for 2. Want to know why? Because it's just what you do. It's common sense. And somehow, this just didn't seem to cross Nick Sirianni's mind. I'll put it this way. If you're one of 2 head coaches in the last decade to do something, and the other coach on the list is Todd Bowles, odds are, it's not a good list to be on. And look, I know at the end of the day that this decision did not matter. I know that. I know that the Eagles ended up winning the game to improve to 2-0. And I know that this decision, much like Nick Sirianni's decision to go for it on 4th and 2 in Week 1 against the Patriots, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner, is going to just be a footnote that is forgotten about going forward, since it ultimately did not matter. But that's not the point. That's never been the point of this segment. A dumb decision is a dumb decision, regardless of the time it takes place, and regardless of whether it mattered in the long run or not. This isn't something that looked bad in hindsight. This is something that looked awful almost immediately. If the Giants won their regular season finale in 2021, that still doesn't excuse why Joe Judge called a freaking quarterback sneak on 3rd and 9. I've done plenty of dumb decisions episodes with decisions made by a team during a win. You can learn more about one of those by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And this is no exception. There is no excuse, none whatsoever, for Sirianni to not go for 2 here. When the last time something like this happened, you were the wide receivers coach for the San Diego Chargers, as they hadn't even moved to Los Angeles yet. You know you're on the wrong side of history. What's crazy is that after the game, I listened to Nick Sirianni's post-game presser. It went on for 15 minutes, and he answered a ton of questions. However, not a single reporter asked him why he decided to kick the extra point up by 12 instead of going for 2 like every other coach in that situation would. Gotta ask the hard-hitting questions, especially since this decision could have been absolutely catastrophic. It's not the first time an Eagles coach forgot how to do math. I talked about a dumb decision made by Andy Reid in 2000 during a game against the New York Giants where he kicked the extra point for some bizarre reason, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. I don't know why these coaches forget how to do math, but fortunately it didn't come back to bite Sirianni on this day, although it absolutely could have. So what do we learn from all of this? If you're up by 12 points late in the 4th quarter after scoring a touchdown, then go for 2. There was literally no reason, none whatsoever, not to go for 2. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. The worst case scenario by kicking the extra point is the same as the worst case scenario by going for 2. But the best case scenario is that the opposition can only tie the game with the commonplace sequence of a touchdown and extra point instead of being able to outright win it. It's the same reason that you go for 2 when you're up by 5 and you don't go for 1. With 4 minutes left, there was no difference whatsoever between 12 points and 13 points. So stop pretending and coaching like there is one. And maybe these coaches need to have a refresher on how to do math, because there's just no excuse for this. There really isn't. Because when all these elements are in play, you can't exactly be surprised when this play backfires. Talk about a dumb decision. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe. as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.